Welcome to this episode of CP Conversations with your host, Nicole Luongo, brought to you by cerebralpalsyconference.org. Today, I will be talking to my friend, Daryl Perry. Daryl is a brand building certified personal trainer, a habit-based nutrition coach, a community manager, and a podcaster who just happens to have cerebral palsy. Daryl believes the most important relationship you'll ever have is the relationship you have with yourself. He uses the fitness and weight loss industries as his playground to show you how to develop genuine confidence and happiness while getting lasting results. For more information, check out yourlevelfitness.com and darylperry.com. And now I get to talk to my good friend Daryl. What's up, Daryl?
It's another day in paradise, Nicole. Just staying busy and doing the things. How have you been?
I'm good. And where is paradise for you, so our viewers know where you're?
Let's see. Paradise for me right now. We don't have as much snow outside, so I'm gonna say down in Florida. That's where paradise would be.
No, but where do you live?
I live outside of Cincinnati, so just kind of Midwestern.
Okay, so I'm in Florida now. Did you get some of that snow and all that stuff that's going on?
We got like the outside edge of it. We didn't get a ton, but yes, I remember that you live in Florida, and that's where I would want to be right now because it's a little chilly here right now.
Come on, well, you know what? It's funny you say that because it's going to be like in the 40s.
Oh, and you guys can't.
And it's only like once a year or twice a year. So I actually have been in cold weather. I just don't, my body does not react well. I just can't get warm. I just don't like it. So.
Well, that I understand. And I know because my in-laws all live down in Florida. And I know my brother-in-law who coaches soccer, he says whenever the temperatures get down into the 60s, you start seeing people in sweatshirts and drinking hot chocolate. Like they're not acclimated to cooler temperatures down there.
Exactly. So. I'm in South Florida. What part are they in?
I'll tell you, this used to be up by Tampa. This was in Lakesville. But they live now, I want to say just outside of Jupiter, so probably not too.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know that. What a small world, huh?
I know, right?
Yeah. So the last time I talked to you was when you had me on your podcast. Thank you very much. A couple of years ago, and I wanted to just catch up with you, and I want to see you're doing so many different things now, and I wanted to just show people what is possible when they have CP or if their child has CP. And I know that you are a personal trainer. And what I was wondering is, how did you land in that field? And was it difficult having CP and trying to go through, because don't you have to go through like certifications and all sorts of stuff?
So a couple of things. What really kind of got me into this, and this is going to, everybody listening will be able to probably relate to this, is I had a really good orthopedic and a really good physical therapist that put me on kind of my therapy and rehab was more or less kind of exercise. It was a very encouraging, supportive environment. This was when I was probably 12 and 13 years old. And this just kind of laid the foundation for it. So what kind of got me interested in exercise was my orthopedic. Now, as far as becoming a trainer, the certifications, it's basically kind of like your personal training certification. I would say it's kind of like any college level course, maybe a 1 to 200 level course, where it does take some time if you're going through it self-paced, which is what I did, but it takes like 4 to 6 months to get that certification. The hard part, at least when I first broke in a decade ago, is when I was first certified, is that having the internet kind of like it is right now, you can showcase and build your portfolio ahead of time. You know what it's like being an individual that has CP, going into a physical building and saying, hey, I'm here to apply for this job, and you're kind of digging yourself out of the hole before you even start talking. So I know that's it's still a little bit more difficult for those of us that have CP or similar disabilities, but it just seemed much more difficult at the time because you didn't have really online portfolios were just kind of starting back then.
What was the most difficult part for you? Was there anything physically that was difficult in terms of
I
getting
will say,
your certification?
so as far as getting the certifications, no. What kept me out of really doing my own thing as a trainer was I was terrified to teach people how to do squats because my form is not like it's, I basically do everything wrong. So it was kind of this whole mindset of like, or thought process of, okay, well, if I can't do this exercise 100% perfect, how am I going to be able to teach somebody else? But all you do, and this is what our buddy Sam would tell you as well, is like you just learn how to cue your clients through the exercise. And for anybody that wants to be a fitness professional, because the cool thing is there are quite a few of us now. If you're interested in this stuff, like just learn the techniques. You don't necessarily have to be able to do them. Yes, it's nice if you can, but if you can't, you can still be an effective coach and trainer. But that was difficult, because a lot of the moves I have to modify for my own use.
Too.
So when I'm teaching others, it's it's good for program design because like I know all the modifications, but if I'm trying to show them the basic move, it's definitely pretty challenging for sure.
And when you got started, was that when you used to do classes at the local United Cerebral Palsy where you live?
So the cool thing, so I got the certification back in 2011. I wasn't really sure. I was working a desk job at the time, and I was kind of like, I always wanted to be certified. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then a couple years later, we just happened to have a UCP down the street, and I went. I got in touch with the program coordinator, and I was like, hey, I'd like to come in and do an exercise class. Now at the time I'm like, well, I'm not a physical therapist, I don't know how any of this works, but you find out that they were doing a lot of activity and enrichment activities, and that's kind of basically what this was. Mm-hmm. So staff would kind of come in there and supervise, and then we would have groups, in some cases upwards of like 16 to 20 individuals. And the cool thing is, if you're a fitness instructor, like this was the energy that you would feel in this class was amazing, because see, a lot of these participants were nonverbal, but they have other ways of communicating. And as a group, as a fitness instructor, you feed off of the energy. Now, also as a fitness instructor, one of the best skills that you can have is being able to adapt to the room. A lot of times when people start, they'll have their program written out. This is what we want to go through. This is the routine. If we're going to use music, this is what we're going to use. And you couldn't do that with this group. Like I would come in, first couple times I had something written out, and then after that it was kind of like, okay, well we're going to do a flow warm up, but literally how you guys are responding to me, in some cases exercise to exercise, is going to determine where we go. So it was something I wanted to do once I got certified, is I wanted to do the adaptive programs. And then when I went in and did this group, like it was the best hands-on experience that I had. And I enjoyed it. I did that for about 15 months, even a little bit after the time that I stopped working for that particular company that I was with that was close by. But yeah, it was a cool experience for sure.
You know what I love about that story, Daryl, is that you literally adapted your coaching style to your audience. And any good coach is going to do that. Mm-hmm. And for you, did that because you were just starting out, was it stressful at all to try to?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's, the thing is, and I mean, this from any time that you present, anytime that you do something, like the nerves never 100% go away. But the only way that you get better at all is by practicing. But the entire time, like the first couple, when I had these programs written out, I would come in with a clipboard and I'm like clutching my clipboard because I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do? But no, it was great. And I mean, there were a few of them that I really, like it was kind of the highlight of their week when I would come in and do these classes. They made crafts and stuff for me for Christmas. It was so cool. So
that's awesome. The best feeling. I used to volunteer with kids, so I know exactly you can't beat that feeling at all. And I'm sure that they really bonded with you, not only because you do have CP and you don't see that. Now you're saying that we're seeing that more in the fitness industry, and that's wonderful. So I just think that that's great that you started out that way. And then you have like 5 jobs, even what I just read. Community manager,
Yeah.
personal trainer, podcaster. How do you balance all these things? And do you have a favorite out of all of those?
So I'm really fortunate where the work I do, like my job, and that's not even because I have a full-time job that I do as well. That's in marketing, and I'm part of a marketing team. We do a lot of the execution for like emails and messaging, but we also do some strategy and stuff. And we work with I'm with, well, it was Teespring, it's now Spring. We just literally just did a rebrand today.
Okay.
But I'm fortunate because the company that I work with is that they're very encouraging of, when you're working for them, you're working for them, but when you're off the clock, they want you to pursue all the other things that you do. So my job and so the stuff that I do during the day prepares me for the stuff I do outside of working hours. The stuff I do outside of working hours is kind of like my chance to test and try things. So like when I go in and I'm like, hey, why don't we, because my job is actually, part of my job is trying to teach content creators how to design and then sell their own merchandise. So like things that I try on my own, is that's actually where I'll go in and say, okay, why don't we suggest doing this? And so yeah, I'm fortunate to where everything kind of blends, but it's busy for sure, and I live by my calendar. I have a Calendly link that basically has all my stuff connected, and if there's an open time on there and you book a time on it, I will look at my calendar that day and I'll be like, okay, I've got a call with Nicole here in 2 hours. We're gonna be talking for 45 minutes. Awesome, here we go. So
well, you made a spot for me, so I'm thankful because I know how busy you are. And I wanted to see if you like. Does anyone ever ask you about getting into the industry, and people with disabilities? Do they want to try to do that?
Yeah. So I mean, really, and the cool thing is with all the stuff I do. So like with fitness, with podcasting, with marketing, I definitely will. I like to, because I've been, to get to this point, I really had to hustle and try and fall on my face a number of times over the course of about 5 to 7 years. So anybody that I can talk to that wants to do any of these things, like if I can figure out a way for them to do it in months, what took me years to figure out, I'm always happy to do it. And I actually think anybody that has CP that wants to become a personal trainer, absolutely do it, because one thing that trainers are always trying to do is to set themselves apart. And just by design, I mean, people will pay attention to you when you're working out. If you're somebody interested in fitness and you have CP, you've probably experienced this. Now, there's two sides of it, because you're going to get the attention that most trainers are really trying to get. But by the same token, if you're going to end up trying to be an employee at a studio, unless you have a really good relationship with somebody already, you're probably just going to end up honestly being the mascot. You may or may not get the same opportunities as other trainers. So if you're looking at becoming a trainer and getting a job at a gym or a studio, you have to have really good relationships with your owners and your managers beforehand, because otherwise you can get into something where you kind of get stuck. I've been fortunate. The studios that I worked with were very progressive. The owners were very open-minded. One guy even said, he's like, look, you're here because you have the disability. Like, you're different than the other trainers I have. You bring something else here. And then the other, that guy was over in the metro area, or close to metro area in Cincinnati. And then I worked for another studio owner here on the Kentucky side where I live. And, kind of the same thing. Like, she and I just had a really similar philosophy on things. We would talk a lot about, like program design and stuff. But I do a lot more on the habit-based nutrition stuff, and I am a trainer as well. So we kind of had a nice rapport, and it literally was like, I was talking to her one day, and I was like, I think I want to get back into training. And within a couple of weeks, I was back there, and I had some clients that some holdover clients that she had, and I had some other people that I was bringing in. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a great field for somebody to get into. I would recommend thinking of what you're wanting this to be big picture. Like if you're wanting to just become part of a facility, I would build those relationships first. If you're wanting to do this where like you are running your own business, which is actually what I would recommend, just start thinking of what is setting you apart besides just having CP. And if you do that, especially in the landscape we live in now, where so much of this is on Zoom. I mean, shoot, you really can create your own life. I mean, it's really pretty cool.
So what does set you apart aside from CP as a trainer? Like, are you going to make me, if I train with Daryl Perry, am I going to be doing 9,000 burpees and are you going to scream at me like
so here's where, this is actually, and you set that up perfectly. Like, kind of the stereotype that most trainers go for is like the really, really hardcore workouts and they make you feel it like and the next morning or whatever, or, we want to get these results, like I want to lose X amount of pounds in however many weeks or months or whatever. And for me, I have a fundamental belief for pretty much everybody that has ever tried to lose weight, that is kind of always on or off the diets or on and off these programs, is that they're trying to do too much too quickly. And I just have a hunch that if we started with the really basic stuff from a foundational level and did that consistently, that the vast majority of people that have not been able to be consistent and not have been able to get the results that they're looking for would be successful. So for me, I'm the foundations guy. Now, I have the time that when I work with clients, either if I'm doing a coaching call where we're just kind of talking about goals and execution and how that's going, or if I'm doing now a virtual training session, that's my one-on-one time. But what really always kind of irked me about when I was training at the studio, and even when I worked at the gym in college, I was just a staff member there, not really a trainer, is like you would see these trainers, you'd see your clients maybe a couple hours a week. And now, and that was it. I mean, you might like email them every so often, and then later you might text them. But like now, if you're somebody that's putting content out on the internet, which you know all about, and you're doing like podcasting and you're doing like videos, you can have a steady stream of things to where you're really always with your clients, always with your community. I mean, I'll get somebody, one of the coolest things when you are like a trainer and you're known for being in the fitness space, I'll get questions from people, like random DMs on Instagram, and somebody will be like, well, what do you think about intermittent fasting? So what I'll do is I'll go into my podcast archive and I'll just go into Spotify, type my name and fasting, and like 3 episodes come up, and I'll be like, here, listen to this, this, and this. And so then you have somebody that really doesn't even know you except for this one question they asked, and you just gave them like 60 to 90 minutes of content that they can just like listen to and hopefully find the answer that they're looking for. So,
right.
But that's what sets me different, is I'm the foundational guy. And when we have a topic, I can be with you almost 24/7 in the most non-creepy way possible.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, because the foundation, it is important just with anything in life. And people nowadays, especially, they just want a quick fix. And when it comes to losing weight, really with anything in life, there really aren't any quick fixes. Otherwise, if there were quick fixes, we all would have what we want in the snap of a finger.
Well, so that's and this is a question I have for you, because I think now being patient and like really being able to work through the process of something, to me, is almost like it's a desirable skill that most people don't have. I mean, you and I have been in the workplace, before this entire internet boom, when things used to work a whole lot differently. I mean, do you think, like, kind of on the scale of patience, like we've kind of gone the other way where everything is immediate, and like most people aren't patient about anything?
Yes, I do. I mean, actually, that's one of the things that sets me apart, because I don't quit.
Yeah.
Most people, they try something once, they try it twice, it's too hard, they don't know how to do it, they quit. And if you're going to achieve anything, you have to have longevity, and there's nothing wrong with quitting. If sometimes you have a passion or you have an interest in something and you try it, and maybe then you realize, well, I don't like this, it's not making me happy, or whatever you wanted to get from it, I'm all for that. There's valid reasons for quitting. But yes, we do live in a society, especially right now, where we could just get anything from Amazon, and
Yeah.
whatever we want. And I love that. But for the purposes of what you do, which I need you to coach me, building a brand and all that. I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even know, how I've lasted, but it's because I have a lot of perseverance.
It's so two things that you made me think of right there that I think are huge, which is one, having CP, most of us have a routine that we have to go through in the morning just to be able to move around. Like otherwise we're going to be really stiff, we're going to be really sore, like just trying to go throughout the day. So like we get used to just having to do this mundane thing over and over every day, because if we don't do it, we're not going to be as mobile as we would be otherwise. And I think, what I figured out as far as like building a brand, you're absolutely right. Like you stick with the big picture thing, which is I have this name and this idea that I really want to build, and you get super clear on what you want your brand to be, and you stick to that. Now, all the stuff that's going to lead you to get to where you think you want to go with that stuff you got to be flexible with. And you also have to be flexible with where it's even going to be where you end up, because like, I mean, it just doesn't make sense I incorporated Your Level Fitness in 2014. I had an idea on what I wanted to do, but like the things that I was trying to do 2017, 2018, a lot of those had nothing to do with what I wanted to do back in 2014. So like, if I was to get upset, which we all do when we first start something, because something doesn't work out the way that we think it should, even though we've never done it before, like it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're able to just kind of like hang in there and like just test things and figure it out,
yep.
I think anybody that's ever found something that's worked for them, you'll find people that have maybe had one or two successes. They've had like a ton of other things that they've tried. Most of them are not abysmal failures. I think the only time somebody really truly fails is if they physically are unable for whatever reason to get up and do what it is they're trying to do. Otherwise, like you really are just kind of learning from something, but you have to be able to separate what the outside world might think of you versus how you view yourself, which can be really tough. But I mean, I think the group of folks that you and I are associated with, and like kind of what having CP does to you because you have to adapt and conquer everything in life. Like, I think it sets you up, because like by the time you become an adult, you're like, okay, so I can do something. It may not work out the way that I want it to, but like, what's the risk? I mean, I've had people looking at me and making assumptions my entire life. Like, what does this matter if this doesn't go right? On the flip side, if something goes really well and you find something that you really enjoy or something that you're really good at, or you really develop a passion around stuff, like it's all upside. And, I think one thing for me, and this is anybody that's listening, we talked about podcasting, and I had the idea to do a podcast. I was just going to use the Anchor app, the little thing on your phone where you basically are recording voice memos. And like, I got in my head for at least 6 months, and I just didn't do anything. And then I put out one episode. I had this perfect format that I wanted. I'm like, I'm going to do content every day. It's just going to be quick tips. And then for 6 weeks in my head, nothing was good enough to do a second episode. And then I was just like, well, you know what? I'm going to do one episode a day for a month and see what happens. And at the time, the app would only record 3-minute segments at a time, and then you'd have to string everything together. So my whole thing was I didn't want to string anything together. So I'm just going to do like a 3-minute podcast episode, super short. Some of them wound up being like closer to 5 or 6, but most of them were pretty short. And I got to like day 27, and then I took a break. But I didn't get down on myself, because I was like, well, I've gone through this whole thing, and I started to get into the habit of doing a podcast. That's what I wanted to do. So I took like a day or two off, and then I put 3 episodes out in one day. So I'm like, okay, this taught me what it needed to teach me. And from that point forward, with content creation, like I basically pay attention to my audience, and I know kind of like, because I'm paying attention and because I'm listening to them, like I have an idea of what kind of messages they're going to relate to, but like I'm always getting feedback from them. There's things that I think would be helpful or hilarious or whatever, and they're kind of like, yeah, no. And there's other things I'm like, I don't know about this, but let's just put it out. And it really resonates with people. So like, I think for all of this, it's just really getting comfortable with putting yourself out there and realize, like, you're not failing. You're just trying stuff out.
I love that. I really do, because even though when I have an idea or something that I want to do, if you know me a little bit, so you know that nothing really stops me.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to start a podcast like 4 years ago, and I couldn't figure out like some of the software, and I bought a microphone, and I really did try, but I was like, you know what? I am not, you need to have, I was confused for that part. So I didn't want to, because I didn't have anybody to go to. And then my mother passed away. And so, I put it on the back burner. And so I could relate when you say, you had all these ideas and then time went by because fear or whatever got into your mindset.
And podcasting's an interesting one, because there's so much out there about like the top 10 pieces of equipment you need, and like, here's what you need to get started. And then there's this little app that's owned by Spotify that is how Anchor's how I record everything. And it's just like, you record and you put it out, and it's complete. Because I did that. That was part of the reason I didn't get a podcast started, is because I'm like, okay, I'm going to need this kind of mic. Oh, what the heck is a mixer? Why do I need one? Like, what RSS feed? Like, what is that going to be? Like, it's so funny, because like some people that'll say, "Oh, you're a podcaster," and I'll say, "Yeah," and they'll start talking podcast jargon, and I'm like, that's not me. Like, well, what kind of podcaster are you? And I'll be like, well, I've put out this many episodes since I put out like 1,200 episodes since January.
No, that's
so like, yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, and see, But
when did you start it? When did you start it?
January 4th, 2018.
And so what's the focus of it?
So the focus initially was, I'm just going to do short, practical fitness related things and motivational things every day. And the idea was, off the start, was that I wanted people to be able to just kind of passively listen to me. Again, like, they'll be able to hear from me when I'm not around. So that was kind of the idea from the start. It was originally called the Almost Daily Podcast, and then I started doing those, and then I was like, well, what if I want to talk about other things besides fitness and mindset? What if I want to start talking about marketing a little bit? Because at the time I was doing some marketing consulting, because I had so that stuff was on my mind, and it was funny because I would go to these networking events, and this is where it really clicked with me, that because whenever you do something at first, you're kind of like, okay, well, what's going to be the barometer of me being a success and like being somebody that actually knows this. And I remember I was at a BNI meeting, and they're like, so what makes you think you can talk about podcasts? And I said that I had done so many episodes in X amount of time. And like, some people were kind of looked at that like, well, you don't have any production behind it. But other people are like, holy crap, how do you do that? So, from that's kind of been my whole thing with podcasting. But I started with those solo episodes. And at first I didn't want to do interviews, because like, how, especially the first time you talk to somebody, and if you're not doing it on video, you can't pick up on the cues. And I was so afraid that I was going to like interrupt people and talk over them and all that. But like, what happened is I just told my friend, I was like, hey, I'd like to try an interview. Like, let's see how it goes. So she and I did one, it went okay. And then the second one I did was another friend of mine. And like, as I recorded those, as I was setting things up for that, I'd seen something where Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about, like, you got to put yourself out there, and you have to like, you have to take opportunities, but like, your intent has to be, it can't always be like, what's in it for me. And I was connected with his trainer at the time on Instagram, and he was putting something up like, it's like, hey,
who is Gary Vaynerchuk for the people listening?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk. If you're Gary V is somebody that is he runs a marketing agency. He's been putting content out on the internet forever. So if you're into like social media marketing, he's actually a really, really good one to follow. He has a podcast where he puts all these keynotes out. He has some books. His books were actually very influential in me switching from what I was in before with sales to like actually finally getting into marketing and making some traction with it. But I mean, the thing is like, so I messaged him. I said, hey, you're doing this Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like, if you want to come onto the podcast and talk about that would be awesome. And he responds back like within 10 minutes. He's like, yeah, man, I'd love to come on. He's like, we can just talk about whatever you want. And
wait a second, stop.
Yeah.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Not Gary, but his trainer.
His trainer. Okay, I want to make sure everybody understood because I was like, wait.
I'm sorry. Let's clarify there. But yeah. Oh, wow, yeah. So anyway, this guy, Jordan Syatt, he was like, yeah, man. He's like, I would love to come on and we can just talk about anything.
But that's still awesome.
But I literally, because at this time I'm like, well, I don't know about these interviews. And I remember I put my phone down. I'm like, okay, this is about to get really serious. I better figure out what it is I'm going to do. And I remember again, like the nerves don't really go away. But I interviewed him. It was a nice chat. I was nervous pretty much the entire time. But like after that, it was just kind of like, I really liked doing interviews. I like talking to people that I knew one was a good place to start. Mm-hmm. But the other cool thing was like in the fitness space, I would just start. If somebody was connected with me on Instagram and they don't like, they seem like an okay person, I would just invite them to like come on. And because I always had this thing where like on my podcast, I've had Jordan on. I've had some other pretty large social media people like within the fitness space on. But it's also cool because like I'll have somebody that just started their account and like, or they've gone from just having a personal account where they've just shared stuff with friends and family and they have like 40 followers. I'll be like, yeah, why don't you come on and tell your story? And the cool thing is like when people are talking about what they've been through and what their goals are and what their interests are, like you can't help but root for them.
Daryl and I have so much to talk about. We're going to continue this in part 2.